Hello humans and welcome back. I'm Rock99 and I'm here for you with The Last of Us franchise review part 2. In the first video we analyzed the first media of this successful franchise, so now we're left with its highly awaited sequel. But before starting, I want to make a few things clear, because this game became a very controversial topic for different reasons. What I want to say is that while writing this review, I really did my best to be as objective as possible, and I can guarantee it because if you've seen part 1, you know that I'm not a big fan of the first game either, so I really have no reason to favor one rather than the other. And I actually read the leaks after playing and completing the game, because I just feel bad when I happen to find leaks about something. You know, my mind goes to all the people who worked on it. And I also didn't care enough to actually view and read everything. Whatever, let's just continue already. The Last of Us Part 2 is an action-adventure horror survival game, sequel of The Last of Us. It was directed and written by Neil Druckmann, with Ellie Gross as a co-writer. It was released for PlayStation 4 in June 2020, 7 years after the first game. The game has an hyper-realistic design. This not only demonstrates the potential of new graphics and technologies, but also reflects the cruelty and realism of the events we see during the gameplay. Events that are said to be related and inspired by experiences the cast and Druckmann himself had to go through during their lives. The story follows two protagonists, whose situations are mirrored and confronted. So the game switches perspective multiple times between Ellie, who we already know, and the new character introduced to the series, Abby Anderson, interpreted by Laura Bailey. Abby is an ex-Firefly and the daughter of the surgeon that was killed by Joel at the end of the first game while saving Ellie. Yeah, you know, that guy. Now, before we try to understand what it is that pissed off half of the fandom, I'll outline what I think the game deserves to be praised for. It is made clear how time has passed, and you don't see it only with the characters, with a grown-up Ellie or an older Joel, but you can also see how people reorganized in functioning communities. In the meantime, the fungus has evolved itself too, just like it would normally do in nature. So during the game, you can now encounter new types of infected. Is this the evil within? You can also see how time has passed by watching how nature has claimed back the abandoned cities. What's interesting and very effective is that this concept has been merged with a new gameplay mechanic, as you can now hide and sneak behind enemies within high grass. The environments show the beauty and potential of new graphics, and you can see how much effort has been put into small details. The lights and colors too are smartly used to create very different atmospheres and to represent the emotional states of characters. Seriously, the Seraphites village on fire? That is art. The Last of Us Part 2 is definitely one of the games with the best landscapes and visuals I've ever seen. The gameplay too has been improved. The AI is more dynamic. The allies can now warn you about the enemy locations, or take the initiative and face enemies themselves, while on the other hand, human enemies can now sneak behind you and break dogs to break through your stealth strategies. There are more platform sequences, and new actions have been added, so now you can use ropes and break glasses. Enemy fire can now make you fall on the ground and force you to fight back from a much more vulnerable position. And their arrows can impale you and make you gradually lose health if not removed. From my point of view, it's a beautiful and entertaining game to watch and play. But still, why was it negatively received by the public that was so badly waiting for the sequel? What happened? Well, do you remember for what I praised a lot the first game? Directory, dialogues, writing? Okay, well, in The Last of Us Part 2, these aspects are actually the problem. The story is a mess. It has potential, but from my point of view, it hasn't been properly structured. And that's why it doesn't make the player develop empathy for the characters. I'll do my best to explain why. One thing to keep in mind, and that my professor told the class at the very beginning of the writing course, is that
Writing stories about revenge is not easy.
Revenge is a controversial theme, and when you write a story like this, you need to carefully explain the reasons why the characters' actions are moved by it, in order to make the readers understand their situation and create empathy. Just to give you an example, the 2021 Korean TV series My Name develops this theme very well. Actually, this is not the best drama ever made because I guarantee there are some big writing mistakes there too, and I say it as someone who actually enjoyed it. But the characters pursue their revenges, and these are linked with each other and move the story until it reaches the climax that carries the big message that despite you may be on the right side or the wrong side, if your actions are moved by revenge, eventually you will do horrible things, lose people you care about, and reach the point of no return. Ended up alone, with no place to go back to, and with blood on your hands. A monster, basically.
Santa, what's
The Last of Us Part 2
really about?
Vengeance!
The Last of Us Part 2 has this message as well, but for how it was structured, it looked more like the typical American drama, with all the focus on the characters' emotional and temporary problems. Revenge is just what justifies you going around the game. And one of the first things I noticed since the beginning is that differently from The Last of Us, there is a lot of tell and don't show, and some of the things that are told are showed later in flashbacks, making the previous dialogues completely useless. I mean, why are you showing me the party when you used a lot of lines and almost 2 hours to tell me about it in the intro? Flashbacks can be very useful tools when properly used, but in The Last of Us Part 2, they constantly interrupt the narration to show events the characters already talked about. The needed ones are those that tell you who Abby is and why she exists. The flashbacks we see are relatively short sequences of gameplay, but they should have been the core of the sequel as they answer the questions left behind the ending of The Last of Us. What is going to happen to Joel and Ellie now? Will there be fireflies left to hunt them down? What are the consequences of Joel's selfish choice? Characters from the previous game aren't coherent with the new versions of themselves. Joel and Tommy would have never been so confident with a stranger, and Tommy will never go on a dangerous journey without carefully thinking about it. We all know that people change a bit when they get older, but can we justify their actions with this? Marlene too is out of character. Nobody more than her was convinced about doing anything necessary to put an end to the pandemic. She was suffering for it, but she was determined to sacrifice Ellie in order to develop the cure. So I don't think that at the end of the first game she said what she said because a random surgeon told her so not long before.
Marlene, she said that they have their own little quarantine zone. Whatever happened to me is the key to finding a vaccine.
A vaccine. Whatever it is you think you're going through right now is nothing to what I have been through. This isn't about me, or even her. She's a child, not some petri dish.
I'm aware of the situation.
And you're okay with killing her.
If this was your daughter,
Hand her off, come back, the weapons are yours.
what would you do?
And then there's Abby. I honestly didn't like a single thing about her character. What was the purpose of making her look like this? What Abby's muscles are for if she didn't even kill Joel with her bare hands? Because that is what I was waiting for once I noticed how buff she was.
Joel Miller.
Who are you?
Guess.
It appears to me that all the other women in the game who don't look so buff can do exactly what she does, even the pregnant ones. And about that, Naughty Dog, explain to me the logic. The reason why, during an apocalypse, an 8-month pregnant woman who not only is a medic, but a medic who can perform surgery, should risk her and her baby's life like that? It is true that women are not helpless when they're pregnant, but stressful situations can damage the baby in any way. This happens in the real world. How could it not happen in a post-apocalyptic frontline? Is it possible that of all the Wolves members nobody else could go? Did you expect me to believe that of all the matches in the gym put there to justify Abby's looks, nobody could, or at least insisted, to take Mel's place? And did they have enough medics and surgeons to allow one of them to risk their life like that? It may be overlooked, but humans that have that kind of knowledge are a precious resource for any community, especially in critical situations like an apocalypse. So this just doesn't make sense. And by the way, you try to go around carrying weapons, shooting, jumping, climbing, running, and fighting while carrying that weight on your back and legs. Anyway, going back to Abby's appearances, what does her visuals tell you about her character? That she likes to lift weights? The fact that she has acrophobia could have been a very interesting fact about her, something that could create empathy and then could have been a very useful plot device. But at the point she actually faces her fear, the player is so done with her that you don't even feel that satisfied when she overcomes it. That was supposed to be a sequence full of tension, empathy, because you know how scared she is. But it ended up being a sequence of her just whining. She's really unlikable. Her whole character is. Through the entire game, she always does whatever comes to her mind without thinking about anybody outside of herself and their purpose at the moment. The first thing you see her doing is executing someone who just saved her. She basically led her friends away from their safe base just for her to do that. Then she leaves them to go after Owen, despite knowing he and Mel were together and while Mel is pregnant with his child. Then she kills her comrades and everybody else for 2 kids she just met.
You're my people!
And then you see her willing to kill a pregnant woman. At least Ellie didn't know it when she killed Mel, and indeed remains shocked about it. But Abby just...
She's pregnant.
Good.
Anyway, despite everything that has been said and done about this game, I personally believe that it is not that bad, but also not that good. It is indeed a bad sequel though. Everything that has been established in the first game has been almost completely wiped out, for a story that alone could have been interesting and could have worked. A young woman loses her father because of someone. She follows them anywhere to avenge her father, but doing so she puts another woman in her safe situation, so now she's the one being hunted. The girls confront each other multiple times without neither of them being able to put an end to it all, as they're equal in skills, strength, and motivations. Until, by seeing how seeking revenge has transformed them into monsters, they part for good with nowhere and no one to go to. I think a story like this can be very interesting, but this game spends so much time trying so hard to make you like Abby, that eventually as you play you're completely detached from the story and the character. Players were so indifferent that they even sabotaged themselves. It is incredible to think that players would let their character be defeated like that. So if Naughty Dog, like they said, planned this from the start, for what reason do they needed to bring the player to this level of detachment, also considering that they had important contemporary matters to deal with? Why? Why not? I also believe that what the story really needed, aside from a better structure, is a good antagonist. It could have been Marlene again, who may have survived just to get revenge against Joel. It would also make sense for her to spare Ellie. The antagonist, if not Marlene, could have also been anybody just seeking for revenge. We know Joel has a dark past after all. A better ending could have been a scenario where this antagonist gave Ellie the opportunity to sacrifice herself in order to develop a vaccine and save humanity. But revenge had consumed her to the point all she thinks about is pursuing her own selfish goal, exactly like Joel did. Well, actually, the game ending could have been better if only they added little cutscenes or lines said by Ellie during the gameplay, like, "What am I doing? How did I end up doing this?" or "Is it worth it?" This alone could have helped players understand why at the end she lets Abby go, instead of her having this sudden epiphany. Whatever. So in conclusion, the visuals are astonishing, and the gameplay is way better than the previous one. And now that this comes to my mind, I strongly believe that Abby was supposed to be a transgender character. I believe she was born with this concept, but something happened during the final stages of development, so Naughty Dog panicked and rearranged in a bad way almost the entire game. Because, in my opinion, this concept for her makes sense. If you think about it, If Abby was a transgender character, a lot could have been easily explained. Not only her looks, but most importantly, her attachment to Yara and Lev. Lev is a transgender character, and his arc is about how this made the community he belonged to turn against him and Yara. If Abby shared a similar story, it was more than believable for her to empathize with him, to say something so deep as, "You are my people." Something must have happened during development. This is all I have to say about this franchise for now. Very recently, the second remake of The Last of Us has been released, and from what I heard, there will be a TV series or a movie, I don't know. I'm certain they're planning to make more stuff though, so probably there will be a part 3 of this franchise review. But for now, I just thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe for more, and let me know in the comments what you think. If you agree or disagree with what I said, or if there's something in particular you'd like to mention. For more content and to know more about my reviews, follow me on socials too. You found the links in the description. Thank you again and see you soon. Bye!